everybody. Afternoon, evening, wherever you happen to be. Today, I'm going to broadcast an episode by my good friend Ken MICALLEF. He's a New York native. He's a Maltese, Mediterranean descent, clever-witted, short-tempered New Yorker that I find dear and near to my heart. He actually was the one who kind of nudged me into doing my YouTube channel, so thanks again for that, Ken. He's a long time writer and musician. He has some wonderful insight. He knows a lot of people in the industry. He's chatted and interviewed with a lot of the real luminaries. He's knowledgeable about the whole hi-fi thing, so I feel that I know very next to nothing about. I play my sound through house PA systems, and that's what I have here in my house now is a PA system. Actually, I have 3 PA systems in my house. But Ken has been writing for a long time, interviewing lots of great people. He has the Jazz Vinyl Lovers Facebook page, which is a great page. I'd like to remind you about my page, JVC, the Jazz Vinyl Club, also a great Facebook group. Please join them. Ken's channel out of New York, the Hi-Fi. I'm going to screw that up, but I'll write it in here. He's a brilliant guy. Got a lot of good stuff to say. So I'm going to broadcast a little channel for him, and just subscribe to his channel. Check him out and tell people about Ken. A lot of you have come to me from Ken. So enjoy the episode. Thanks very much. Peace.
New York City is full of crazy people. Anyway, I wanted to do a video for Dan about my 9 or 10 or 11 or 12 favorite jazz records for a Sunday morning. Sunday morning, in jazz terms, is a idealistic place. Sunday morning represents that time when we've worked all week, we partied on Saturday, and now it's Sunday morning when there's sunlight and we are relaxing and waking up slowly for a day of rest. So the following records, though primarily jazz, with a couple left ringers thrown in, are all about that vibe, that chilled, relaxed, slowly waking up to reality vibe. Cinematic Orchestra is the creation of one Jason Swinko, who, enamored of jazz, but also as a member of the Ninja Tune roster, taken with samples and sampling environments, created a jazz group based on those samples. So he created tunes based on samples, probably of well-known jazz classics, then presented the samples to his musicians, who then improvised and created new material based on the samples, to which Swinko then remixed the samples, creating Motion, Cinematic Orchestra's debut recording, which is, in my opinion, a classic jazz recording, full of jazz moods and jazz vibrations and great moments of swing and improvisation, but primarily mood. It's a wonderful record of jazz moods which are universally felt and which is very successful on this recording. Melanie DiBiase, a French singer who I know very little about, but who has made a goodly amount of records. She's very dark, very noirish in the film noir vein. I love her compositions. I love the mood she extends. This record is Melanie DiBiase remixed by Giles Peterson. I couldn't find my other recordings of hers. I have a couple more on vinyl, but and this is remixed, so it has more of a dance groove. But good God, what a great singer, a beautiful woman, a great voice. She just knows how to create a mood, a vibration, and it is unmistakably out of the jazz idiom, in the same way that again, Cinematic Orchestra or Portishead or any number of groups draw on jazz, but she is more of a pure jazz singer, even though she may not be labeled as such as far as categorization goes. But man, she writes great songs. Her other records are also great. And just dig her vibe, dig the sound of her voice. She's a philosopher, man. And you can hear it in everything she sings. She swings hard. Her tunes are very, I don't know, a combination of Nina Simone, Kenny Rankin maybe, and little Joni Mitchell. But also, you know, there's some Duke Ellington in there as well, deep within the seams of what she's doing. First time I heard her, I forgot how I came to hear Melanie DiBiase. She's certainly not a name that's known in the U.S., even though quite popular in France, I take it. But man, if you dig jazz vocalist, she is the top of the game today as far as I'm concerned, even though I think she's really not considered jazz. Tommy Flanagan, for me, more so than Hank Jones, is one of the greatest classic jazz pianists. Extremely lyrical, always sort of mellow to my way of thinking. His record Overseas with Elvin Jones, I believe Wilbert Ware, is one of the great jazz recordings of all time. Also, the original pressing of that is extremely valuable. But this on the Moodsville series, and I love the whole Prestige Moodsville series. It's the idea of they all strike a certain mood. They're mellow, they're dark, it's 4 a.m., they're swinging, but they're simmering. They're kind of in the vibe. Everybody's kind of mellow on all the Moodsville records, which cross a great divide in the Prestige catalog. I'm sure Dan has every Moodsville recording. I don't. When I see them, I buy them. But this, for me, is one of the great ones, with Roy Haynes on drums. I mean, you could not have two more articulate, lyrical, swinging, urbane, smart jazz players than Tommy Flanagan and Roy Haynes. And they play off each other so beautifully on this recording. You know, these guys are they're masters of the vernacular. They're masters of the gift of jazz gab. Roy Haynes, you know, I think when Elvin Jones was alive, Roy never quite got his due, even though he made so many brilliant recordings with actually a much wider array of jazz musicians than Elvin did. Because after Coltrane, Elvin had his own group and they were playing to him. But Roy Haynes plays on so many brilliant recordings across the jazz canon, and he swings to this day. I mean, it's amazing the guy is still alive. Forget Keith Richards. What is, I think Roy Haynes is like 93 or something, and 3 or 4 times a year he has a week at the Blue Note. And if you see him play live now, he can't really solo as he did, but when he's swinging, he swings his ass off. His time feel is beautiful. And it's the same as it was on the great Roy Haynes records, Out of the Afternoon, or Chick Corea's Now He Sings, Now He Sobs. You know, I have a real problem with America in general. We do not honor our jazz musicians, who are some of the greatest geniuses to ever stride the earth. You know, from Art Tatum to Roy Haynes to Charlie Parker to John Coltrane. There should be statues of these guys in Washington. Yet, you know, Coltrane has a little statue, I believe, in Hamlet, North Carolina, where he was born. Whatever, not to get on that whole trip. But this is a great record for Tommy Flanagan. There are no bad Tommy Flanagan records, but this one on Moodsville is perhaps my favorite. This record, the trio, on an unusual London Savoy recording. Hank Jones, Wendell Marshall, Kenny Clarke, perhaps the most elegant jazz trio to ever exist, is just a perfect example of what a jazz trio should be. Hank Jones in his element, Kenny Clarke. There's never been a more swinging, more elegant, more pristine, refined, capable, technically perfect drummer than Kenny Clarke, largely credited with creating the ride cymbal beat. I believe Joe Jones is credited with creating the hi-hat beat we all know so well on jazz recordings. This is a wonderful recording of just, if you want the epitome of what a jazz trio is, the trio is it. There's a little confusion because there's another record also called The Trio, also on Savoy, also led by Hank Jones, which is purely The Trio. This record is The Trio and guest. So you hear Herbie Mann. I'm not at home, so I don't know the other players, but you hear them playing beautiful tracks in the idiom with guest playing solos and vamping alongside the main three characters. If you can find this record, this is one of my top recordings for what exemplifies a jazz trio. And a perfect record for a Sunday morning.
Someday he'll come along, the man I love, and he'll be big and strong, and treats me sweet and gentle, the way he should. I got it bad, and that ain't good. I don't care who knows I am blue when you're alone. Who cares for starlit sky?
Eydie Gormé of Steve and Eydie fandom, fame. Eydie Gormé from that period, late 50s through the 60s, through the early 70s, when jazz was still largely the currency of American popular music. You figure in the 1940s, big band jazz was the most popular music in America before jazz itself switched to bebop, hard bop, post bop, fusion, free jazz. But she sang in that wonderfully swinging way. She had amazing pipes. The woman could sing anything. I think she probably could have sang opera because she just has effortless power and the swing of the era she grew up in. And I love anything by Eydie Gormé. You might say it's not jazz, but again, that's from that period when jazz was the common and vernacular in popular music. And you had Frank Sinatra, Bobby Darin, Leslie Uggams, Dionne Warwick, all these singers who would not necessarily cite as jazz singers, but who undeniably swing in the idiom. And I just love all these old Eydie Gormé albums, and they're pretty hard to find on ABC Paramount or Columbia. And she made a ton of records, and she also had a second career as a popular Spanish singer. But Eydie Gormé, Eydie Sings the Blues, great record. Great for sitting around on Sunday morning. In New York City, you traditionally read the New York Times, have some coffee, and just chill out. Barry Harris, Chasing the Bird. I will take Barry Harris as one of the great hard bop and more pianists of all time, as exemplified by this record with, I believe, Clifford Jarvis. I'm not sure who the bassist is because I'm not at home. I'm sitting here on Bleecker Street having a beer and smoking a cigar. But you cannot go wrong with this record. It's funny, he only does one bird tune on the record. Maybe it's in the vibration of Charlie Parker. But every tune is just, again, this is another jazz trio record that is simply stellar. And for my money, Barry Harris is a more interesting, more, I don't know what the word is, intellectual, more hard bop, more seriously oriented player than a couple of the other pianists I've included in this video. Great technique and really meaty, meaningful, lyrical lines that he plays on this record. I've had a few other Barry Harris records. I have one, Preminato, I believe it's called, with Elvin Jones, but this is a better recording on Prestige. This is oddly a Japanese Prestige record. But it's just yet another perfect trio record. And on a Sunday morning, you know, you want to have something driving and swinging hard, something you just kind of coast along to, and this is that record. Oscar Peterson with Louis Hayes and Nels Henning Ørsted Pedersen, one of the greatest bassists of all time. I'm not a huge Oscar Peterson fan. I know that in a way he's a perfect pianist, sort of out of the mold of an Art Tatum, somebody who really doesn't need a group. But while he swings very hard, particularly on this record, and there's some great exchanges between Peterson and Pedersen, I think Peterson and Hayes really raise Oscar Peterson's game on this record, which is a Pausa recording, which may have been on MPS originally. Frankly, for me, it's background music because Peterson is just so, effortless. But he's kind of on auto control because he has so much technique. When I first moved into Greenwich Village in the early 90s, and I worked at the Blue Note Club briefly, Peterson was still alive then. He would play the club every year, and he was paid more than anyone who ever performed at the Blue Note in that period. I think he pulled like $100,000 a week or something, and the lines were around the block. Elis Regina, Brazilian music in general is an incredibly deep well of sophistication, of groove, of compositional ingenuity, harmonic beauty that is easily on par with any American jazz. True Brazilian music is sort of an unknown quantity to most Americans who are into jazz. I don't quite know why it is. Pre-bossa nova, bossa nova, tropicalia, even Brazilian drum and bass music is incredibly sophisticated. Elis Regina, often considered the greatest vocalist in Brazilian music, recorded dozens and dozens of records from the mid-60s right through to 1984 when she died of an overdose of cocaine, which is really, really sad. I guess her most well-known record to American audiences is Elise and Tom, her duo recording with Jobim. In America, we know bossa nova music, we know Getz Gilberto, we know Joe Donato, we know the great work of Jobim, but I think it sort of ends there, and that is really tragic. The work of Elis Regina alone is effervescent, beautiful, joyous, sophisticated. There is a sophistication in all Brazilian music that actually, I think in many ways, supersedes American popular music easily. It is just astounding music. She's just a force of nature. Her tone, her phrasing, her energy, her brilliance, her just joyousness, and everything she sings is, to me, extremely profound. Anyway, Elis Regina, just an amazing singer who I just adore, and I bought many of her recordings, and they're just effortless, and they're really brilliant, and you really should research this music. It's very deep.
Hey there, just something I want to share real quick. I'm going to just add this on to an episode coming up here one of these days. There's something I had, I want to call it an epiphany. It's stuff I've touched on before, but there's something about being close to death. Having death be an option on a daily basis. And here with this virus, we had fleeting moments of that, I think, early on. I think more and more we've kind of got away from that ultimate fear. But I think there was moments of that where I felt some panic, and I went to my guitar as a place of safety and solace. And there's an old saying that a lot of the great art is made by the losers of the great wars. And art comes from a great struggle, great art. And it's the expression of tyranny and sorrow that allows a people to have something to say. But there's also another aspect to it. When you live so close to death all the time, there's a human nature element to us that wants to leave a legacy behind of who we are. What was I? What did I have to say? What was my experience on this plane? And there's really only two ways that I've seen that you can do that. One is through children. And they're the ultimate palette, blank canvas as it were, to put yourself into your goods and your bads. The second option is art. Money, real estate, that stuff's all nice, but it doesn't tell anybody about you once you're gone. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a story to tell or express your identity. It wouldn't tell your grandkids who you were. And your offspring informs of that, and the art you make. Writings, drawings, paintings, and music. And art takes a lot of different forms. Sculpture, you could go on down the list. But music is, for me, one of the most tangible ways for me, when I feel a pang of fear, to put a little composition together with some words that I can leave with my wife for her to feel comfort and connected to me and still have me be there. It's that tangible. And this whole thing's had me writing some new songs. I've actually been teaching my kids how to play guitar and keyboards, and they've been kind of accompanying me on some of them. It's been kind of fun. It's a little frustrating because keeping kids focused, but for the most part, they've been pretty receptive and they're learning pretty well. Maybe I'll share a video here someday of what we've been doing, but the writing of the music has been therapeutic. And so people who live in turmoil, people who live at the edge of a great sorrow all the time, have death at their doorstep, are going to feel an immediacy to use art far more frequently than someone who lives in luxury and comfort. They'll get to it someday. I've got 47 years left at least. I'll get to it someday. But when death could be today, I better play something. I better express something. I better leave a tangible marker of me for the future to remember me by. And I think for some people it's very subconscious. For other people it's more of a conscious thought process. But I know for me that those first few days, I picked up my guitar a lot just as a place of refuge. And a place of, if something happens to me, I want my family to be able to hear my thoughts and my words and my feelings, my love for them, you know, my humanity, my mistakes and my apologies. It's just such a human expression. And those people who don't use art, you're left with making kids. And they're going to express your bad stuff too. I'm a step parent, and so I love my kids dearly, but they don't necessarily have my bad genetics or my bad, and they got plenty of bad from me, but hopefully I'll put more good in than bad. But so kids are a wonderful expression of self, but art is really your only other vehicle to leave behind a canvas of who you were for someone to look at, someone to hear, someone to feel, and get and grasp who you were. And I had a couple of debates on some of my comments these last few episodes, and absolutely I feel like jazz, which is an art form based in emoting, you know, it's improvisation is directly linked to the emoting of my soul, my consciousness, my spirit, my pain, my sorrow. That's what you're emoting. That's what an artist does. And to sit back and just hear the music is the same as to sit back and just take in a great painting. It's fine, it can be done. But it's more interesting to me to know what inspired that art. What drove that guy to paint that? What was that scene depicting? What was he trying to say? What was it reminding him of or warning me of? Great art, great literature, great music. It's all so directly linked to the expression of self and the things I want to leave behind. And so I think jazz is one of the most powerful, tangible ways for a guy to tell the world who he is. And I strive to want to hear that better and understand them better and be inside of who this guy's personality was. So when I listen to him, I feel like I can actually spend time and hang out with him and like, oh yeah, you're fun to be around. And I'll leave it at that. I'm going to attach this to another episode, and if I don't get something from Ken today, I might just actually put this out today too. So I hope you're all safe, doing well. I just think it's important that we recognize art isn't just about a distraction or a pretty thing on my wall. It's someone's soul being bared to us. And we need to do the people who bear their souls the honor and the service of trying to have some introspection into what were they telling me. Jazz Shepherd, Argo Jazz. Just so you know, I got t-shirts too, but the jerseys are kind of my trademark thing. So we'll talk to you soon. Got a little Ray Brown playing in the background. Jean-Michel Reeser, love you, brother. All world, be safe. Peace.